But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9.
I've never seen such hideousness in all my life.
Listen to all of this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with money.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9.
I've never seen such hideousness in all my life.
Listen to all of this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with money.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9.
I said I've never seen such hideousness in all my life.
That is Lord, they say.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Let's begin it.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9.
I said I've never seen such hideousness in all my life.
That is Lord, they say.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
Hello and welcome to Alison and Hannah 1. Dr. Phil talks men and Andrew Tate. Let's observe his wisdom. And I kind of went through this video a little bit last night while I was at work just to see how it was gonna go. Andrew Tate doesn't appear to really be in it. Like, he shows him to the guests a little bit here and there, but not as a guest. He didn't have Andrew Tate on at any point there as a guest. So I guess that makes this clickbait, as opposed to clickbait. But there you go. But before we get into that, as always, we got to do what we got to do. And just because this isn't HBR talk doesn't mean we're not going to. So, Honey Badger Radio has a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions that we dish out, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters, at least, to switch their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. And so this is the first of however many where Alison and I come on and find something to talk about and analyze and make fun of and whatever else we can do with it. This one this one looks like it's we might have to kick it around a bit. When I was Did I what?
Did you find any wisdom?
No. I'm not a big fan of Dr. Phil to begin with. Just really never have been. And this really, like, seeing him, that he really did just use Andrew Tate for clickbait here. There's no other way to describe this. And, used him as a bludgeon to try to, like, batter his guests' ideas around. And, by association, kind of like what it actually reminded me of was hearing about the other Badgers getting taken to dinner by Jeff Charlotte from the GQ magazine. It's a farce of a journalistic outlet, really, but at the first men's rights conference. Honestly, the men's issues conference, where he sprung a pedophile on you guys, and that just it seems like he's done that. He's not that Andrew Tate's a pedophile, but he's currently the wrong think boogeyman of the day. And not that I agree with everything he has said or disagree with everything he has said, but I mean they do hate him pretty well, which, in my opinion, makes him interesting. If feminists hate somebody, that makes them interesting. But
at least you want to hear what they have to say, and see if it actually relates to what feminists have said they've had to say, or just people in general. Because I think he's getting a lot of pushback from a lot of different sides, isn't he? I don't know. But I mean, personally, when I've read some stuff that he has written, he doesn't seem like the greatest person. And I know that he has actually done things that are quite deceptive, exploiting men's loneliness. Yeah,
very much so.
Desire to help women in order to make money, which is not going to endear the man to me. Of course, I doubt any of that was touched upon in this Dr. Phil. Can you give us like an overview of what you watched? Like, did Dr. Phil have a thesis? Maybe not wisdom, but did he have?
I didn't really get a thesis out of it either. This has just been hate?
Raw ape like fury.
Not exactly. If you notice, there's been a pattern of how mainstream establishment media, particularly left-wing establishment media, has covered Tate, and in particular, if they are talking to guests about Tate, especially like guests that are part of what they would label the manosphere, they have a set of quotes that they confront people with, and that's the only aspect of Tate that they present. They don't talk about anything else. They try to make him larger than he actually is. They try to make him more influential than he actually is. Like, it's not that he didn't have influence. He clearly did. But, they try to turn him into this terrifying, like, I don't know, space demon coming for your sons that the entire men's rights movement is responsible for, and that, the entire men's rights movement should feel represented by. And
did he actually mention the men's rights movement?
He keeps mentioning the manosphere.
Yeah, I don't think the manosphere guys really like us, so I'm not sure if we're part of it.
See, I can remember when all of the men's issues discussion, from men's rights activists to MGTOW to pickup artists to anything that had to do with like the mythopoetic men's movement, was referred to as the manosphere because it was the greater sphere of discussion of men's interests and issues in terms of like gender issues. And now it's gone. Like now the manosphere is just pickup artists, I guess. But either way,
I suppose. I mean, we're still around.
Yeah,
for what it's worth. I guess we're just too weird to kill. Yeah, you know, like that line from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, about Dr. Gonzo.
I actually
one of God's own prototypes.
I've never watched that movie. Never watched the
Strange
whole movie.
To live.
There's like
too unique to die.
Jeez. There's like one scene of that movie I've seen like 50 times, and I always come in the middle of it, so I never get to see the movie. I had that problem with The Big Lebowski until I sat down with my husband and watched it.
Okay, so do you want to watch Fear and Loathing? Okay, you know what? I'm going to tell Remy's that we should watch that movie because we're doing sort of a, I don't know, it's sort of, we've been in the Discord. By the way, if you guys want to join us, it's badgernation.online. We do movie nights and discussions, and lots of fun, lots of activities. And we've been doing like a what the fuck movie.
Oh, I have some of those for you.
yeah, and
that's my favorite kind of movie.
This weekend we're going to be watching Being John Malkovich.
Okay, mine might be a little outside the sphere of what you guys are comfortable with.
Yeah, no, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to say no because then you'll pop something up and it may be outside the sphere of what I'm comfortable with.
Have you guys watched Tokyo Gore Police?
No.
Mine might be outside the sphere of what you guys consider normal.
No, but I'm just going to tell him we should watch Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
There we go.
It's good. It has nothing to do with whether or not Dr. Phil has any wisdom.
No, it has nothing to do with that.
Unless he seems like drug-fueled rant at any point in this.
There we go. Well, we should probably get into this Dr. Phil. This Dr. Phil. This is actually 41 minutes long, so we probably won't finish it tonight.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
And also, guys, before we get into it, I just want to reiterate: if you want to send us a message, you want us to get the full benefit of your funds, and you want to not have to run the gauntlet of the YouTube censorship police, please go to feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And also, we're doing our monthly fundraiser. It is at feedthebadger.com/support. After this fundraiser gets funded, I'm thinking of doing something specific for Brian, maybe to either make sure we can cover his income for the upcoming month while he's convalescing, or perhaps be able to have a little bit extra so that we can get somebody who can help him out with some of the challenges he has as a result of what's going on with him health-wise. Anyways, that's feedthebadger.com/support to help us out, make sure we can keep these shows keep coming, and feedthebadger.com/justthetip if you just want to send us a message and also a tip. I guess it's not just a tip, is it?
No, it's not just the tip, but that's okay because it is still funny.
And also someone screaming what is that? Kamikaze. I'm going in.
Going in. Okay. So here we go. I cut out Dr. Phil's intro because I don't want to have to banana my way through it, and it's like a minute of the video.
There's no drug-fueled ranting in this.
I don't know. Like we have no knowledge of what psychiatric medicines Dr. Phil may or may not be taking, so I can't say.
Okay.
Because as soon as they put you on something like Prozac or anything like that, it changes everything. So you talk differently and everything. So there we go.
So this may or may not be drug-fueled ranting.
That's my disclaimer. This is
okay.
Not known to be a drug-fueled rant of any kind. There we go.
You could have had a job like in mainstream media there, with that or politics. It's not known at this time
to be a drug-fueled rant.
Alien weather balloon. Okay.
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, aliens have to know what the weather is going to be like here before they come here. Right. Mm-hmm. Right now it's raining bullshit.
Yeah, they need to know. Do they pack an umbrella? Or their Bermuda shorts?
They might come packing after they watch our mainstream media, but I don't think that they'll be carrying umbrellas.
Mm-hmm. So I'm still using the wallop people.
Yeah, there we go.
Could you imagine that? Like this whole raft of greys coming out of a spaceship with umbrellas. What are the umbrellas for? Hit people upside the head for being stupid.
There you go. Yeah, definitely.
Save us, our alien overlords. Okay.
Definitely need to hit people upside the head with umbrellas because they're stupid. We are dealing with a lot of stupidity right now in mainstream media. So I guess in comparison, maybe Dr. Phil's not that bad.
Mm.
And
right,
it is also
what may or may not be a drug-fueled rant.
It is also not confirmed at this time that Dr. Phil is actually a gray alien in disguise. Just saying, we have no information regarding Dr. Phil's status as an Earthling.
He may alternatively be a reptilian in disguise.
Mm. Yeah, that's very possible. Very possible. We have no information regarding that as well. He could be a committee of small aliens in a very large human suit. Well, there was that portrayal in Men in Black with the alien that drove the human suit like a mech warrior. So it could very possibly be.
Yeah, the disclaimer is we do not know if the tiny alien driving the Dr. Phil human suit is on drugs.
That's correct. And we cannot confirm whether or not the Dr. Phil mech warrior is actually weaponized. So with all of our disclaimers out of place now or in place, we will start this video. Start.
Andrew Tate.
Just like Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
I never heard of him.
He had asked who had ever heard of Andrew
tweeted,
Tate.
I didn't know who Andrew Tate was, but my 12-year-old son did.
Okay, I'm not echoing, am I?
Not to me. This first line killed me. I don't know who Andrew Tate is, but my son did. My 12-year-old son. Do you know what? When my son was 12 years old, he did absolutely nothing I didn't know about on the internet because his computer was in the living room, facing out into the room with his back to the room so that at any moment, Mom or Dad could see what was on the screen. I knew who his friends were. I knew what websites he played games on. I knew what games he played. I did not give him alone time on the computer at all because I didn't want him to get victimized by, there's all kinds of horrible people on the internet. I mean, like, if he had started watching videos like YouTube videos or like TikTok didn't exist. If it had, he would not have had TikTok on his computer. That's the other thing because it's malware. TikTok is literally just malware that also happens to show you videos. But like I take care of my son. Took care of my son when he was a little kid. Took care of him when he was an adolescent. I take care of my family. It's what parents do, or it's what we're supposed to do. That's why you become a parent, to take care of a family. And so if she didn't know who someone was that her son was regularly watching, like, at 12 years old. Now, when my son was 17 years old, yes, he had alone time on the computer. Like, he was old enough to say, hey, Mom, this makes me uncomfortable, come and take a look. But yeah, that blows my mind that there are parents that don't know who their kids are watching on YouTube or TikTok or
I'm just curious,
Twitch or anything.
Darcy, did everyone in your family clap after this?
Darcy?
Well, this is the woman who said that I didn't know who Andrew Tate was, but my 12-year-old son did.
Oh, yes.
And then I confronted him about it, and everybody clapped.
Yeah. What the heck? How do you not know what your kids are doing on the internet?
Because I think that she's full of shit.
I'm afraid that this might actually be true.
She's trying to, okay, well, I think that she's trying to almost demonize her 12-year-old son, which incidentally is probably why it's guaranteed why we have Andrew Tates in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, the more you socially ostracize talking about the issues facing men and boys, the more socially unacceptable the people talking about it will become. Yeah. And not just because they're awful people, but because you are ostracizing everyone. And the only people who will continue to speak out are people who you don't want men and boys to be listening to necessarily. I mean, I think that they can listen to whoever they want, and we should be allowed to speak about these things. But Andrew Tate is rising, or rose, or whatever, because of the things that the mainstream media says about boys. Like, it's as simple as that. That's where he comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. If you...
He's like monsters from your id.
If you actually sit around and demonize boys all day long, and you make them feel like they're useless and worthless and everything about them is bad and no place they can go is appropriate for them to be and all that, and then they find somebody who says, you don't have to live like that. Here's ways that you can improve yourself. Here's ways you can become a better person. Here's ways you can become a more interesting person. Even if that guy is an idiot and doesn't have any kind of plan, moral core, plan for, how to improve their lives and their outlook. Like, even if all he's doing is scamming them, they're going to listen to him because he's offering them at least a way out of being everybody's scapegoat for everything that's wrong in society. Like, that's a horrible place to be, is this being a society's scapegoat.
Yeah, they've turned boys into their whipping post or whipping dog. I don't know.
Their dumping ground. They're dumping ground.
They're dumping ground. So they're the scapegoat of society. So they've turned them into their whipping boys, and the boys are like, well, we're gonna go over here where we're not being whipped, and they're like, why are you doing that? Why are you attracted to this person? And the thing is that it makes the rhetoric more and more extreme. And also what I've noticed is Andrew Tate's, or guys like Andrew Tate, seem to pop out of the woodwork once a year. Have you noticed that? They last for about a year, 2 years, and then they're the flavor of the month or the flavor of the year is gone, and we're on to a new one. Yeah. But so they don't last very long, and they all have an incredibly shallow message, and they don't really ask a lot of the boys and men that they talk to in terms of questioning the things that they've received as truths about themselves. I might be wrong with Andrew Tate. And I'm not talking about people like, I don't know why they lump in Jordan Peterson with Andrew Tate, but regardless, he seems to be more substantive. But there's not a real great introspection. What they seem to be doing is trying to give men and boys shelter without acknowledging that they need it, which is sort of a mental pretzel that's interesting to watch. And I don't think it really ultimately changes anything, which is probably why the mainstream media promotes these guys over anyone else who talks about this stuff. Oh, yeah. Because he's not going to change anything. He's not going to change anything for the men and boys who listen to them. He's not going to improve their lives. What I think is happening is they're living vicariously through him. And so they're subsuming their identity under the umbrella of Andrew Tate, or they're just watching the train wreck. That's entirely possible. And he sold instructional training. Like he sold some sort of process where, like, you did a university thing, and you had to pay
to be part of it, and it was expensive. So like he was scamming. There was that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at him. If you look at him, it's like, well, first, step number one, if you're a man who wants to get the attention that Andrew Tate gets, is, be an MMA fighter, be 170 pounds of pure muscle, be good looking,
right.
For the women who like that kind of guy, it's like, of course he's going to be successful. Any guy like that is going to be successful, because, he's fit, he's muscular, he's tall, he's attractive. And he does MMA, that he's going to be successful with a certain group of women. And you can't buy his success unless you're that man. I mean, it'd be much better for like Brian. And I don't mean that to say that Brian is unattractive or anything, but he's much more normal looking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Brian's a regular guy. He's not an MMA fighter. He's successful.
Yeah, he's married.
He's successful through his exercise of his own ethics and in particular his own work ethic and his own morals and his own ideas. And he's not like almost all these guys come out with the same advice. Hit the gym, improve your looks, and be more assertive. And then they tell you what women like. And sometimes they get it right, and sometimes they get it wrong. Sometimes they stereotype women where majority of women probably like the things that they're talking about to some degree or to a great degree. But there are women who will be outside of that norm that might actually be better for you to seek out.
Well, I'm going to tell you the type of women that Andrew, because I've seen them.
Yeah.
Andrew Tate likes the type of women that are drawn to MMA. Now, you can definitely attract to that type of woman, and you can probably really, quite honestly, be sharing her with a bunch of other guys. But it's like my overall point here is he does probably appeal to a particular subset of women. Again, like you were saying, not necessarily the best kind of women. Well, if you like that subset, that's fine. Yeah. I don't want to judge, but they are definitely not all women. And then the other thing is, like, what I was trying to get at is you're better off listening to a normal guy who's found success on his level and what he did than anything from Andrew Tate.
Yeah. Yeah. And
because that's you're not going to get, like, what are you going to get out of that? He's starting from a position. He's not a normal guy. He's not starting from a normal guy's position. So it's not like he's going to be giving advice that is necessarily going to assist the normal guy. So what I'm thinking is happening, and this is something I've seen over and over again, is I think that, again, these men are living vicariously through Andrew Tate, and these boys are living vicariously through Andrew Tate, if they aren't like the train wreck thing or that. And this is not exclusive to men. I know that women, particularly Black women, are living vicariously through Meghan Markle. This is something that seems to be happening. It's like you can't stand your own life, so you live through, almost you project yourself into a person who resembles you or you want to resemble, and you live through their life while not doing a damn thing to improve your own.
Yeah, this is actually pretty normal behavior for people. It's a lot easier to do that. It's a lot easier to fantasize than it is to actually do. And
it's much harder.
There's a way to use that, actually. And it's, for instance, all right, when I was a photographer, when I had like a 30-year career as a sports, wedding, portrait, anything, commercial photographer. I worked for a newspaper. I worked for my family business. One of the things that I would do to make sure that the next day when I did my work at a wedding, for instance, that I remembered everything I needed to remember and did everything I needed to do, was go through and visualize how the wedding normally goes, how the bride and groom had talked to us about this is what we're going to do, because sometimes they do different special things. There's been, I've photographed weddings where dad and grandpa and great-grandpa even walked the bride down the aisle together just because of a generational thing, where dad had passed away and stepdad walked and carried a picture of dad. Like, there's been some different things that I've photographed that, like, thank God for autofocus cameras because you cry. But yeah, you go through and you step by step, these are the things that happen in a wedding. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. And then the next day goes much more smoothly because you have thought about it and you've thought about what you do. And when you plan for your future, you do the same thing. I need to lose, like currently, I need to lose 30 pounds. I'm in the process of losing 50 pounds. I've lost 20. And I plan out what I'm going to do, plan my meals ahead of time. And I plan my exercise ahead of time. And I visualize, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to do it, this is what I'm going to look like when I'm done, this is how I'm going to feel when I'm done. And focusing on that as part of your incentive for taking action, that's valuable, that's motivational. But you can easily get caught up in, well, I'm just going to think about this and not do it. I'm going to visualize, and boy, it sure would be nice if I fit into that outfit again, or if my back didn't hurt from my gut pulling on it when I stand up, right? Those things aren't useful outside of making yourself feel comfortable with a shitty circumstance that you really wish you were not in. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people watching and idealizing people and idolizing people who are really not ideal and not role models. If that makes sense. Like, it's you're taking the first step and not the second step. And,
You're not, Anyway, that's not like, honestly, I think overall Andrew Tate is probably nowhere near as vile as a lot of the stuff that comes out of, for example, radical feminism. Like, I'm pretty sure he hasn't called for the death of 90% of women, or anything like that. And so that's the bar I set for men when they allege somebody is misogynist. I set the radical feminist bar. I'm like, can this person get tenure? If this person was a woman and it was all gender flip, could he still get tenure in the gender studies department? Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I'm not going to call that misogynist until you call the reverse misandrist,
Yeah.
And it's some pretty nasty stuff. Okay.
Well, and honestly, the thing that everybody plays and confronts their guests with, or whatever else they do, the thing that everybody seems to really be butthurt over with regard to Tate is the comment that he made that I've started thinking of it as the 50 Shades reference that doesn't directly reference 50 Shades. And the reason I think of it that way is because all of these media personalities are pissed off about this comment, but I remember reading news stories about sex toys being found in theaters when 50 Shades of Grey played in the theaters, and that whole movie is kind of a long version from the descriptions that I've heard. I hope I'm not mischaracterizing it, but it seems like a long version of that comment. But let's go ahead and see what we'll get to that comment, I'm sure, tonight. Let's go ahead and see what's said here. Play.
So parents, they're coming for your boys.
I forgot about that line already. They're coming for your boys. Just so you know, we're being we're being associated with this. We just aren't being associated by name.
Okay, they're coming for your boys. All of the people who go out and tell boys that they are responsible. For example, they are responsible for a system that actively uses violence against women to perpetuate itself. That's okay. All the Laura Bates who are sleazing their way into your boys' schoolrooms and subjecting them to actually, I think, the worst kind of sexual content there is, which is sexual vilification. So taking the sexual innocence, literally ripping the sexual innocence away from middle school boys. That's okay. But we draw the line at Andrew Tate.
Mm-hmm.
This is repulsive. Okay.
Let's see.
They market misogyny and racism.
They market misogyny and racism.
There's a broad range of people out there, and they're not all the same. So I don't want to lump everybody together.
Yeah. That's the last time we get anything remotely not lumping everyone together. I don't want to lump everyone together. They're not all the same. Now, for the rest of the show, they're all going to be lumped together.
Tate claims to be helping.
They lump in, like, if you're a conservative or a Christian, they consider you part of this too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Young men acquire lots of money, drive luxury cars, and pick up hot women.
Oh, the horror.
Okay, so...
But last August, he was...
Go on.
Okay, so this is bad?
Yes, this is bad, that young men might figure out how to do these things.
Like, when did it become bad to become, like... When did it become bad from boys or men to want to become the type of man women seem to be attracted to? Like, how is this being framed as... Maybe he's not being framing this as bad. Is he framing it as bad?
It seems like it. And actually, feminists in general do that. They frame it as bad if a guy is popular. If a lot of popularity is only for women, right? And only some women, only women with right think, only queen bees, right? If a guy has popularity and social pull, then he's robbing women of it. That's basically the attitude they have.
Isn't Dr. Phil in that category then?
Yeah, he should be. But
it's not Dr. Phil part of the patriarchy?
Yeah, he should be. I would think
more than like 12-year-old boys.
I would think so.
This is what really kills me. Like 12-year-old boys, they're part of the patriarchy. Dr. Phil, oh no, just because he gives lip service to this framework in which women are victims of everything.
Yep.
Okay.
And then of course he has his harem of women that hang on his every word and think he is the end all be all of good advice. It's just sad. Like, not his life. Like, he's probably pretty happy, but their lives, and like he could probably teach other men to do what he does. Other feminist men have done that, but I don't know. Like I said, this guy has always just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I just don't. Something about it from the first day that I saw him on the scene. There's been a mannerism that I've had problems with that I can't even put my finger on, and this kind of tells me I was right.
Banned on social media for his misogynistic viewpoints, some of which I can't repeat on daytime television. And then just last month, Tate and his brother were detained by Romanian authorities in connection with a human trafficking, rape, and organized crime investigation.
So he has framed the conversation. He really hasn't said a well-rounded set of things about Tate. He's just told everybody why he's bad. We do have a comment, a super chat from Albert Nader Retro says, if you aren't offending feminists, you're doing something wrong. By the way, Alison, it became bad/wrong when Dr. Phil married his second wife and became a simp. I kind of think he might have been one before that, but
yeah, that's probably not. And there's probably a strain in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that, I don't see Andrew Tate as being more misogynist than the average pop culture icon for girls is misandrist. I mean, setting aside the allegations against him by Romanian authorities, which, they haven't been proven, so let's wait till that comes out.
Yeah.
Setting aside that, I don't think anything he's said, I mean, maybe some of the stuff he's done in terms of his business is unsavory, and also his exploitation of young men. But has he really said anything more misogynist than the average female pop star is misandrist?
No, not really. Like again, and to the allegations and everything, I've had people demand that I accept the allegations without evidence because Romania. There is no nation in the world where you're going to convince me that due process doesn't belong. So that's one that until I see evidence, like real solid evidence that isn't contradicted by the statements of the people who are being used as witnesses against him, which is really weird. His own alleged victims are coming out and saying the state is using us as victims and we aren't. So that tells me there's something untoward going on there with the state. Like until I see something solid that I can be like, well, this is undeniable. I'm not coming to a conclusion on this case. Like every time somebody presents me with something that indicates guilt, something else comes out that indicates that maybe that's bullshit. And so I've watched a little bit of V. Monroe discussing the situation. And from what I can tell, he said the same thing. He's not going to come to a conclusion until there's more information, more solid information. And, like I'm not going to hang on every little bit of gossip that comes out about Tate with regard to this because it really doesn't help make a decision. Like, he's accused of this. He's alleged to have said that. This person said this about him. These people said that about him. So-and-so doesn't like him. Like, okay, well, that's fine, but none of that pertains to whether or not he's guilty of anything, other than maybe being unpopular with some people. Like, I'm waiting. That's me. My approach is wait and see.
Yeah.
So, and when it comes down to his activism or his business and all that, I'm not a fan. I'm not a hater. I don't care unless you see him really taking a lot of guys for a lot of money and fooling a lot of guys. Then I will come out against him because scamming men is still possible, I guess. As cynical as we've all become, there are still men who are younger who are more vulnerable to that type of scam. And so that would be something that would actually set me off. And it looks like that's probably the one thing that I'm going to come out and criticize him on, because it looks like that's what he's been doing, really. And everything else, it's hard to tell. Senior Sticks gave us $2 and said, due process? What is this due process you speak of? It's starting to become a faint memory, isn't it? That's really sad.
Okay, so once again, if you have a comment, please also send it through the feedthebadger.com/justthetip. I really appreciate it. That's probably the best way to get funds to us and avoid the censorship on YouTube.
I better check those as well. Well, I'll probably just check those at the end of the show.
I've been checking.
Okay.
If you give a man true free reign, completely be who you want to be, and you don't let society program you, he's going to drive a fast car, he's going to have a bunch of women, he's going to want to have a bunch of money, he's going to do whatever he wants, right? Or whether a woman wants...
So, again, what he said there isn't bad. It's a stereotype. A lot of guys would greatly enjoy that. I also know guys who, if you just gave them free reign and they could do whatever they wanted at any point in time...
go see their kids.
Yeah, they would go spend every waking moment with their kids. And I also know other guys that would just, go off on their own, do their own thing, go camping in the woods, and tell the rest of society, fuck you, I don't want anything to do with you, leave me alone. So
this is honestly sort of a negative and very stereotypical view of guys.
Yeah.
Like, left to their own, guys sailed around they found a route around the Cape of Good Hope, so that they didn't get cock blocked by the Ottoman Empire. On their own, they explored North America and settled it so that women could eventually come. On their own, they invented calculus and physics and branches of mathematics and philosophy. This is there's a lot more men doing stuff like that than having sex with a harem of women and driving a fast car. Like if I were to say a sum total of men's activities, a lot more of men's activities involve taking care of their families, policing their society, building their society, maintaining their society. Maybe you're saying, oh, if society was completely maintained, if we lived in the mouse utopia, this is what men would act like. You know what? I doubt that too.
Yeah, I think the mouse utopia measures what creatures that do not have the level of intellect and emotional, the emotional spectrum of humans would do. But I think humans do so many things that other animals don't do that the mouse utopia experiment really can't be translated to humanity.
I've never seen a lot of agitation for the men's issues of having multiple women in fast cars.
No.
The issues that seem to be very concerning are access to children, fair alimony, and custody arrangements and child support, actual recognition as being victims of domestic violence, getting taking part in a reasonable meritocracy where they get rewarded for the actions that they do take.
Not getting lied about.
Yeah, this is such a simplistic way of saying, oh God, man, this guy's repulsive. This is a repulsive attitude towards men.
When you're a kid, when I was a kid, and I grew up in a neighborhood that was most of the kids my age that weren't like 3 or 4 years younger than me or 3 or 4 years older than me. Most of the kids that were in my age group were boys, and most of the kids that played in one big group were boys. One of the things that boys did that the girls didn't was boys that were like 3 or 4 years apart would still play together because they'd all play football and stuff like that. But when we would talk about what we were going to do when we grew up sometimes, like everybody always talks about that when they're kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or I'm going to grow up and do this, I'm going to grow up and do that. Most of them talked about doing things like being a fireman or being an engineer, or being a teacher, becoming a biologist, doing different things that they wanted to do that would be considered more ordinary. They didn't talk about, there were a few of them that were like, I'm gonna be a race car driver, I'm gonna drive fast cars, and or I'm gonna get rich, but they didn't know how, and stuff like that. But for the most part, they had very concrete ideas of things that they saw men doing that they admired, and they wanted to do it too. And you'd get involved in sports activities and stuff because you wanted to do that while you were in college. There weren't a whole lot of guys in my neighborhood that thought they were going to grow up and be professional athletes. There weren't a whole lot of guys in my neighborhood that thought they were going to grow up and be the CEO of a company. There weren't a whole lot of, and there are guys that grew up in my neighborhood that grew up to own their own businesses, but they didn't necessarily think they were going to do that when they were little kids. Little boys' fantasies about what they want to do when they grow up are not anything like what he described. There are some guys that becomes their goal in life, that they think that's going to make them happy, and some guys maybe it will, but it's definitely not universal.
Yeah, and the other thing is that, okay, so men want to live in a society where they're not needed. No, Andrew Tate, you don't understand men. I don't think he does. No. I don't think it's a coincidence that our society relies so much on men feeling like they're needed, to the point where we have a gigantic industry that's just women constantly making men feel needed while also demonizing them. So I'm just like, I think that maybe, like you said, there might be a minority of men. They shouldn't be shamed if you want to, have sex with multiple women, pro whatever, and drive in fast cars. I just don't think that this is the sum total of what men are.
Right.
And what's interesting to me is that if you could take a person, just judging from this, I don't know, maybe he has some soulful, deep takes somewhere. If you could take a person that embodies the feminist conception of masculinity after feminists got rid of all of the positive qualities that were traditionally associated with men and focused on like the 1% of men, like Karen talks about this quite a bit. They used to have a catalog of traits associated with masculinity, and they got rid of all of the traits that were neutral or positive, even though more men would identify with them, like having a family, taking care of your kids, doing good in your job, making sure the people who rely on you are safe and healthy, wanting to be needed, all of that kind of stuff. They got rid of all of that and they focused on Playboy, for example, which only 1% of men in their study identified with. And then they said that defines masculinity. And it seems to me like Andrew Tate is taking the feminist definition of masculinity and embodying it, which means that he's reactive to what feminists think men are. And he's basically saying, well, I am this thing. Let's, since this is how we express this is the only thing that we're allowed to do as men, I'm going to do it. And then you can live vicariously through me to feel like you're a man. And yet it's feminists that first restricted masculinity to this one single note that he embodies. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it is very sensible, actually. And the sad
how else
thing
are they
is,
supposed to feel like they're a man? They're restricted to one single expression.
Right.
And he's doing it. Like, this is like Dr. Phil is responsible for this man. The mainstream media is responsible for this man. Feminists are responsible for this man.
Single moms are responsible for this man.
Yeah,
and I would bet
this is your baby. You said to boys, the only way that you're masculine, the only way that you can differentiate yourself as a being, and people will choose a negative identity over no identity.
Yeah.
Just watch your Michael McLuhan or Marshall McLuhan. People would rather have a negative identity versus no identity. So you've basically pushed boys into a Morton's fork. Okay? You either have no goddamn identity as a boy and you become a girl, or you embrace Andrew Tate. That's what you did, society, by promoting feminist thought about boys and men and saying that these are allowing them to define men and boys. Yep. And this is the result. You have a whole generation of boys who think that the only way they can be men is by being the way that feminists said. And feminists only allow negative traits for men, so they're being negative. And like I said, they will choose a negative identity over a no identity whatsoever. And that's what they're doing. Congratulations. You constructed this, Dr. Phil.
And I have a feeling that a lot of the women that watch this kind of talk show, and I think Dr. Phil sort of came out of the Oprah Winfrey type talk show, but there were other women that did talk shows where you had frustrated single moms bring on their badly behaved daughters and their unruly teenage daughters, and like have the whole audience just castigate the shit out of them before they send them to boot camp for unruly teenagers. And the whole thing was basically just a spectacle of, look how bad my kid is, look what I have to put up with. The mother is a victim of this child being what the mother shaped the child into through a lack of discipline or through setting a poor example, or a combination of those things. Dad's never around, it's always, we're divorced, I didn't get together with him after we got pregnant, blah, blah, blah. And then the kid gets yelled at by a drill sergeant from the boot camp in front of everybody, and then they go off to boot camp. And there's like episode after episode after episode of that on, I think, I'm trying to think of the name of it, like Sally Jesse maybe did it. There's a few different things that, and Dr. Phil was sort of like the in-between where people would come on with problems that were also behavioral problems, social issues, things where they they were making bad lifestyle choices. But instead of doing the drill sergeant thing he was kind of the namby-pamby lecturing high school principal, psychiatrist kind of, and he actually started with Oprah doing something else, and then that was his role on her show, was lecturing people for being making bad choices. Richard Beer says in her being sued by the beef, yeah, that's right, because Oprah came out against the beef industry, and the beef industry went, no, you don't. And I think she lost that too. I don't think she won that. I think she ended up having to pay, because she really made some slanderous comments about the beef industry that were not true. And anyway, that seems to be like his whole thing, was essentially taking behavioral sideshow freaks and lecturing them for the public. And that, I guess that's why people have been making fun of him for years, and why I don't like him. Lecturing sideshow freaks of human behavior is really useless. You really get nothing out of it. They get nothing out of it. The audience gets entertained, and then they go back and continue to make bad decisions and get hurt. Right? That's it. So this thing with Andrew Tate, I honestly think a lot of Dr. Phil's audience probably watched this looking for him to do that to his guests, using Andrew Tate as a bludgeon. And a lot of them,
his guests anyway?
Well, we'll see here in a minute. But I think a lot of them, if their kids knew who Andrew Tate was and they didn't, it is because they are single moms that are either never home because they work, or that are busy with their friends and uninvolved with their kids, that are basically engaging in an amount of neglect that they wouldn't consider neglect, because their kids are fed and clothed and go to the dentist and stuff, right? But they're not guided by mom. Like, Wikipedia snippet says Oprah won that case. Wow. Okay. But in any case, I think that it is very possible that a lot of these women's kids do know who Tate is, and the women didn't, for that very reason. They're letting the internet raise their kids. They're letting the television raise their kids. They're letting their kids run wild to a degree, and they're treating them as a scapegoat for everything that's wrong in their lives. You know, if I hadn't had you, I could have done this, I could have done that, I could have been here, I could have been there, blah blah blah. If your father wasn't such a, insert demonization here, our lives would have been better. You came from dirt, you came from shit, the man that fathered you is a bad person, and obviously by association you are too, but I'm not going to say that part. Son. Right? Like, that kind of thing would send them straight into the forums of any guy that gave them any hope to ever be anything that isn't bad. So here's where they start playing the quotes. This is the stereotypical Andrew Tate set. The I Hate Andrew Tate starter pack.
Wants to be a lawyer or a housemaker or a webcam girl. Unless she has a man directing her, she's up. They're just not built to be completely independent creatures. Men and women are. So
he says this. He's talking about women here. Every woman wants to be a lawyer, a housewife, or a cam girl. They're just not built to be independent creatures. And stereotyping. Yeah, a lot of women actually do just want to be a housewife, because
there's nothing wrong with any of that, but
a lot of girls don't think that's a lot of work. And when you
find out that feminism is teaching girls, like, if you reduce yourself down to a victim in every circumstance, all you are is somebody who's dependent on another person.
Yeah.
And the twist is that feminism basically says, okay, what you do as a woman is you seek out how you're a victim of anything. Pencils, our attitudes towards water lilies, beavers, beaver dams, okay, driving, train accidents. You can turn anything into victimhood. So you can turn anything into how you are incapable of mastering it or overcoming it. And what do you think that turns you into? It turns you into somebody who has to demand someone else save you. And the only twist with feminism versus previous versions of women declaring their weakness, that they're the weaker sex, is that feminism says, well, you are a victim, and the only person that you can beseech to help hates you. Like, the only people who you could possibly ask to help actually don't like you. You know, they secretly hate you. So it's like it is actually sort of a hideous thing to tell women, but it is a belief system of abject dependency and learned helplessness. So he's not wrong. I mean, any woman who's a feminist is doing exactly what he says. They are practicing the art of dependency, if you want to call it an art.
Yeah, and it's really hard to argue that women don't want to be the things that Tate says, when feminists have spent years talking about how important it is that exactly 50% of the field of law and 50% of CEOs and 50% of the top tier of every profession, 50% of engineers must be women, regardless of what the rest of us actually want to do. I don't want to design bridges, right? I don't want to build bridges. Like, I probably could do the job. I can do the math. I can do the planning. I can be meticulous. All that. I don't want to. That's not who I am, right? But I got pushed toward that when I was growing up, even in the 70s and 80s, in my academic experiences, because teachers were like, "Oh, she's good at math. She should be an engineer." Just because you're good at one aspect of the job does not mean it's the job that you want to do. For a while, I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be a teacher. I got to do that. I got to work in medicine. I got to do photography. I've done so many different jobs, and I've loved it. I've loved going from different thing to different thing and trying out the different types of work that I'm good at and capable of, and so on. And it's been great. And it's really wrong that feminists push women and girls to do things that are not interesting to them, that they don't get passionate about, that they don't want to do. It sets them up for failure. Like, if I had gone into engineering, like, my cousin's an engineer and she loves it. She wanted to be an engineer from the time she was a little kid. She loves it. Right? That's who should be an engineer. Somebody who wants to do that and who's passionate about that job. And if you aren't passionate about what you do at all, it's a lot harder to do it well. Unless you're passionate about doing whatever you do well. It's sad that they do that. Of course, there are women who just want to be, and I hate the term just a housewife, because most of the women that really get into that make it a job. Like, to the degree of, stewarding. If their husband is supporting them with his job, they're stewarding the resources as best they can. And I've seen just a housewife come into when I worked in retail, come into my store with a loose leaf binder full of coupons kept the way that you would keep your Pokemon cards in those little card carriers, and come up to the register with like $300 worth of groceries. And after the coupons and the store discounts and the store shopping points discounts and all the other things that she had combined to discount her purchases, she paid 1% of the full price. She got a 99% discount. And that was a regular occurrence with couponers. And, when you're stewarding resources like that, you're taking whatever income comes into your house and you are exponentially increasing its purchase value. So if he's earned $1,000, it's like he's really earned $10,000, because you can get $10,000 worth of value out of it. And, at the same time, if she came in with kids, if they're coming in with kids, their kids are nicely dressed, they're happy, they're relaxed with mom, and you can tell that they're very well taken care of, and they have a good relationship with mom. And that's important, and that kind of thing, that is a full-time job. That is absolutely a full-time job. So there's nothing wrong with women wanting to do that. If they find a man who also wants that as his lifestyle. And there's nothing wrong with a man wanting to marry a woman who wants to do that. Feminists treat it like something that's a woman's right, but if a man wants to be with a woman like that, he's trying to enslave her. You can't have it both ways. And feminists act like all women should want to be a doctor, a lawyer, the CEO of a company and stuff like that. But if a guy expects women to want to be that, again, he's enslaving her. Well, you can't have it both ways. If you think women should want these things, then you should also expect men to want to be with these women. Right? And, as far as the cam girl thing, do you know how many there are? Like, assloads of women, and yeah, I use that on purpose. Assloads of women are out there peddling their asses, whether they make money or not, peddling their asses. Like, and part of it is ego. If you put your tits on the internet and people look at them and they say nice tits, you get ego points, right? That's like it's like candy for the brain. Look, I'm pretty. Okay. And that's fine. I get ego points when I write something and somebody comes back and was like, yes, this. I get ego points from that. That's my brain candy, okay? And it's not a bad thing to get ego points from being acknowledged and validated and so on. As long as, like I also get ego points from if I write something and somebody comes along and says, that was absolute bullshit, and here are the reasons why, and then I take the time to consider those reasons, and I'm able to either argue against them or adjust my viewpoint because they've said something that I think, hey, they're actually right about this, and then I feel smarter because I've done that. And I think the variety of attitudes among women doesn't erase the fact that men who want to drive fast cars, be rich, and have sex with a lot of women do run into maybe a disproportionate amount of women who want to either be lawyers or housewives or cam girls, or porn stars, right? And all of those are just choices you can make. You make choice to be anything. You can decide to do anything with your life. You put your mind to it. You put your skills to it. You're passionate about it, you practice at it, and you do it. There's going to be benefits to it, and there's going to be consequences. And it's up to you to decide whether or not you're willing to face the consequences of a particular life choice. Like there's an earlier retirement date if your profession relies entirely on your physical appearance than there is if your profession relies on building a skill set. So you can't do cam girl maybe for as long as you could do something like photography or writing or being an engineer, because you're going to get old, and everybody gets old, and then there's no avoiding it unless you die, which is not as much fun as getting old. Just from personal experience, kind of sucks. But in any case, yeah, it's not misogynistic to point out that a lot of women want to do these things. And it's not any more misogynistic to stereotype women that way than it is misandric to stereotype men that way.
This is probably going to be some of his most shallow takes, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Okay, let's watch a little bit more.
All right.
You can do 20 seconds.
Not the same. We've never been the same. This new think idea that men and women are the same is complete garbage that's been invented, right? If a woman sleeps with multiple people, that's cheating. That's absolutely unacceptable on every level. If I have a woman who I truly love, and I go out and I come back to her, and I don't care about her, and I only love my girl, that's not cheating. That's exercise.
I'm sorry. If you're increasing the potential that you come back with a sexually transmitted disease, yes, that is cheating.
Yeah.
You are not a French king. Your kingdom does not rely on your loins producing a whole raft of bastards and heirs. Okay? You are a flash in the pan flavor. Yeah, let's just, I'm gonna say that, like,
yeah,
if you have a woman who's tolerating you cheating, she's most likely cheating herself.
Yep. And actually, if there's two ways you can tell that she's cheating. Either she knows you're cheating and she's tolerating it, right? Not open relationship, but she knows you're lying to her and she's tolerating it. Or she should know you're not lying to her, but she's accusing you anyway. Both of those are cheaters.
Okay. I'm just like...
Honestly, that statement of his, that's what's really unhealthy about that isn't just, his double standard. Like, there's going to be double standards. I don't care. I don't care that he has a double standard. His double standard can kiss my ass. Like, go ahead and get offended about that, people, if you want to. What bothers me is he's dismissing men's attachment when they have sex. He's dismissing men's personal investment in sex. And I'm going to go on with more of the statement to show what else he has to say about this.
If she even talks to a dude, it's cheating. Because females are emotionally invested. I have no emotional investment.
That's fooling himself right there. That is how young men get hurt. And not just hurt, but hurt profoundly.
Andrew Tate. You don't have to crawl up inside the feminist appraisal of masculinity.
Right.
You can extend your your horizons beyond what feminists told you men are. You don't get emotionally attached. Are you a sociopath?
This is the thing. Like, I have seen so many guys get hurt because they think that they can sleep around and not get attached, and then
they catch feels.
Yeah, they catch feels, and the girl doesn't. Right? And you get this sort of assurance thing going. Like, I tried that when I was younger, having a friend with benefits, and that did not work out at all. And it ended up with him getting hurt. And that was horrible. Like, I would rather be the one with a broken heart than have to look at the one with a broken heart and not change the way I think or feel to fix that. Like, it's a very helpless feeling. And that was the last time I ever did that. Because it just was horrible. Breaking somebody else's heart is just one of the most horrible feelings that you can ever go through. And guys don't expect that to happen to them in that circumstance. But
and the other thing they don't expect is
when you are in a sexual relationship with somebody, or even when you just do it once, your brain produces chemicals that are designed to create a bond between you. Right? You are experiencing the release of brain chemistry that creates a sense of protectiveness, a sense of desire to continue to be close to that person, a sense of need for that person's approval and consideration. And when you decide to just cut that off like it's nothing, it hurts. A lot.
Yeah. And I would also add that there's, for example, when men get involved there's a culture on campus of almost like date rape, where you take advantage of people, male or female, who are unconscious or blackout drunk. And when men get involved in this, often they get surprised by how negative it is, the impact is.
Yeah.
Because they're told that they should want it no matter what. And the problem is that when men get involved in stuff like this, they will say that they are not harmed, but then you look at their work attendance, their school record, their drug abuse, homelessness, all of these other factors. And in terms of actual physical consequences, men do much worse than women after having been raped by the opposite sex. And this is something nobody wants to talk about. And I think it actually is because, counter to what Andrew Tate is saying here, if you think about it, the child, if we are a pair bonding species, there is no way getting away from that. Human children are completely helpless, and they also take forever to mature. We actually have one of the most bizarre reproductive life cycles in the animal kingdom. We honestly shouldn't be able to survive, but we do because men are invested in their children. A man in like a prehistoric setting who has sex with a woman and leaves is not actually creating viable offspring. I mean, maybe a male tiger that would create viable offspring, like an antelope, whatever. Yeah, that works. Not so for male humans. What he's creating is a dead baby and most likely a dead woman. And in that circumstance, the brain chemistry is going to hit him like a fucking hammer, because Mother Nature doesn't want him to leave her, because that's a devolutionary dead end. So if anything, human males would bond more through sex and these interactions than human females, because the baby's going to be with her no matter what. If he is absolutely necessary, he's going to be more bonded to her to prevent leaving. And I mean, maybe this doesn't occur quite in the same part of the process, but by the end of a relationship, when a relationship breaks down or ends, men are hit a hell of a lot harder than women.
Yeah.
And like, that's when you really see the so-called, she's emotional, I'm not. Bullshit. Okay, then why are men killing themselves when their relationships break down and not women?
Yeah.
Okay? Why are male widowers live like, maybe a couple years after their wives die? Because the emotional bond is so strong. And the other thing is that even if we look back in history, paternal investment in offspring is the original form of parental investment when we're looking at like dinosaurs. So for example, male T-Rexes would take care of the clutch of eggs. When you have offspring that takes a long time to mature, it actually becomes a viable reproductive strategy for the woman or the female to leave her offspring with the male. I know this is really odd, isn't it? And then just go and try to find a clutch of... We don't even know if that actually is an element of human reproductive strategy, for women to just leave their children with men. It could be. So we could be looking at a form of female promiscuity and female reproductive promiscuity that we don't acknowledge. I just find that really fascinating. So
yeah, very possible.
Everything he's saying is not true about men. He's not that off about women, I will say, but he's not true about men. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm saying, could you be any more just have walked out of a feminist paper on masculinity?
It's kind of misandric. They call him a misogynist for noticing female dysfunction and stereotyping all women based on that female dysfunction. But when he talks about men, he talks worse about men than he talks about women.
Yeah, he does. And the
at
thing
least
is that
in these statements. I don't know about the things he normally says.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't do it normally. Like maybe he actually acknowledges some of the issues facing men. But like from these statements, this is what's remarkable. is he looks like someone who has walked out of a feminist paper on toxic masculinity. Incidentally, toxic masculinity is the only way for men and boys to differentiate themselves and have an identity to their own, which, you know, they will prefer over having no identity.
Yeah.
So he is essentially what feminists have constructed men into. He's what feminists say about men. And he's basically just turning around and embodying it, and I suppose being successful, and giving men and boys a way of living vicariously through the feminist stereotype about men. It's interesting. I'll say that.
Yeah. I will say, with regard to role models, guys and role models, don't take all your advice from one place. You know, my role model, I must have had, you know, dozens of role models for different things growing up. And every single one of them had things I could criticize about them if I wanted to. But there were always things that were important to notice, to, you know, like, maybe not imitate, but take lessons from. And it's from my own family members to people I saw out in, you know, on television or out in the world, people I knew in my neighborhood. And I think right now people are treating guys like Andrew Tate as a sole role model, guys like Jordan Peterson as a sole role model, that you have to like everything else, everything about this guy, and he can be the only guy that's right about anything. Well, no. Jordan Peterson's right about some things. He's profoundly wrong about some things. That's part of being human, right? And Andrew Tate probably has some things that he said that resonate with a lot of guys, and he may be right about some things. And it looks like he's also profoundly wrong about some things. Feminists have categorized him as a misogynist. I think that he's just misled about people in general, and he stereotypes people rather than treating people as a whole picture, a whole human being. And as a result of that, he's going to be wrong about a shitload of things, right? Even if he's right about some things. And I think he's a grifter, more than an actual self-help guru. Much more. But in terms of his attitudes towards people, I think the misogyny card is being overused here significantly. I think we're probably going to maybe watch one more little segment and make some more comments, and then we're going to go into getting ready for the after show, because I do have that scheduled for 9:30.
Yeah, that's probably a good plan. But
we can do this weekly for a while. Every other week on Fridays, like my work schedule is, if I don't work that weeknight one week, I will work that weeknight the next week. So I'm going to kind of try to keep it around this time, where maybe we don't go longer than 9 or 9:15 with the main subject, if that makes sense.
And then just going on, like, if you're interested in joining Hannah for the after show, of course you can go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe, I believe. Yeah, subscribe, and get it's just $5 to join us. And you can see the after show, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of more interesting commentary. I am not surprised. Or the patron only show. I should not use that term, the A word, because everybody checks out once they hear it. But I am actually surprised. I'm not surprised at all that they completely blow over his misinjury. Yeah. And also they completely blow over the fact that literally this guy just walked out of feminist literature on masculinity and said, "Hey, I'm here. I'm going to demonstrate masculinity, the masculinity that feminists have constructed and said is the only masculinity for a bunch of men and boys who would rather have a negative identity than no identity." I mean, and this is I mean, I've been talking about this for years. Like years. If you only give men and boys the ability to have an identity by engaging in these kinds of behaviors, they're going to choose that over having no identity. And ironically, they can live vicariously through Andrew Tate's actions while not necessarily engaging in them.
Yeah.
So they just may be supporting him so that he can live out their masculinity and they can live through them vicariously. They don't actually have to do it, maybe because it actually doesn't feel normal to them, but they're doing it because this is a way to feel like a man. He's giving them a way to feel like a man, and he's doing that because feminists created this. He created this entire marketplace. This is why when I did my short on Andrew Tate, I said, I think it was to The Guardian, no, Rolling Stone. I said, Rolling Stone, Andrew Tate is your baby.
Yep.
You created this. This is a man you created. Feminists, look well. This is the masculinity you wanted. You got it. And you literally have constructed a situation in which men and boys either become Andrew Tates or support Andrew Tates or live through Andrew Tates, or they're not men and they don't have a separate identity. You made this, and then you turn around and you blame us. Like,
yep.
Really? Oh.
That is the epitome of femininity in terms of like passive aggressiveness and aggressiveness. Women do that all the time. They create circumstances that they are not happy with as a result of the circumstances they've created, and then they blame other people because they have been raised to not recognize their own agency in making their own choices. Probably the prime example of that is women's reproductive behavior, right? Where a woman knows that if you don't let any semen into your uterus, you don't get pregnant, right? That's the first thing. So she can say no to a guy. She can not initiate sex, because women do initiate sex. She can be choosy who she does have sex with. She can be choosy about birth control. She can use multiple forms. There are like 41 different types that she can choose from. And so if a woman gets pregnant, it isn't somebody else's fault under any circumstance outside of rape. And yet, what do we hear when women get pregnant? She got knocked up. How passive, right? He got her pregnant. How passive. How did he get her pregnant? Was he walking past with the magic dick wand and waved it at her, and all of a sudden a baby started growing in her body? Like, did she slip and fall in a puddle of pregnancy? Oops, I fell in a puddle of pregnancy. No. She chose to have sex, chose who to have sex with, chose whether or not to use birth control, chose what kind and how many. Boom, pregnant. That was her choice. But that's where we are with women. That's why feminism will not take credit or blame for any guy like Andrew Tate. They won't take credit or blame for any guy like Jordan Peterson. They won't take
credit or blame.
Right.
They won't take credit.
They won't admit. They won't even take it for overt male feminists. Like, I can't think of the professor that was stalking Deborah.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about.
They won't take credit for the professor that was stalking Deborah Pawnee. Like that guy. They won't take credit for his bullshit. Right? They won't even take credit for the trans woman who invented the idea of toxic masculinity. The feminist idea of toxic masculinity.
Yeah, they won't take credit for their own belief system, but
right? None of it.
Don't. Yeah, but what's astounding to me is, okay, you constructed this. I guess what they thought men would do would be just to accept not having an identity at all.
Right.
Like that is an excruciating proposition. You're basically asking men to live in a vat of psychological acid for the rest of their lives. And because we know now that certain psychological stimulus actually is perceived as pain. So you're asking men to torture themselves the rest of their lives to abdicate a desire to have an identity, a socially positive identity, because it might be grabbing something from women to say that men have these positive qualities that they can embody to have a proactive, pro-social identity, and then so that you reduce everything down to everything you don't want, And then this guy's snuffling around the garbage heap that's left over. And he's like picking out the nuggets and putting them up and making himself a garbage crown. And he's like, look, I got a garbage crown. And he's gaining a following because he's giving men something, he's giving men something from the refuse that feminists have thrown off from the men's identity. Like they basically garbaged the whole thing. And this is the only thing left of these scraps that he's found and squirreled together into something. And all men are like living through him because that's the only place they can derive some kind of identity, positive or negative, just something. And feminists are like, well, geez, how dare he go through the scraps that we left for men and give them something? How dare he make something out of the scraps that we left behind? It's actually sort of sick and twisted.
Yeah, it is. So we'll do that last little bit. We're gonna listen to one more comment. I think they only had one more of his on here, and then we'll wrap it up. I have at least one more super chat to read. So play. I keep hitting it and it didn't play. Oh no, that was the last comment. So we're just gonna watch.
Oh, okay.
Actually, that's all we need to hear right there. Okay. And that's the women laughing. So that's the beginning, right? So the rest of this, I think the rest of this video doesn't have Andrew Tate in it. We're going to watch, not tonight, but he's going to talk to 2 other men and a woman, none of whom are affiliates of Andrew Tate, really. One has some things in common in terms of beliefs and philosophy and stuff, but not very much. So he basically brought them on to waylay them with Andrew Tate as a the wrong thing boogeyman bludgeon, and that's it. Like that's the whole show that he's going to do.
Do you have any could you give us like a little teaser of these 2 men and this woman, like one of their opinions?
Like one of them actually was offended. He actually said, and here I am coming on. I got to come on here to be an Andrew Tate apologist, and I'm not going to do that. Like that was his. He immediately called it out in terms of what was being asked of him. And
okay, what was his general approach? Like, did he have? Was he a men's rights activist?
He's been involved in the manosphere for 20 years. I believe Dr. Phil called him the godfather of the men's movement or something like this. And like I when I was watching last night, I was at work, so I'm going back and forth between tasks and actually looking at the computer. And I recognized his face, but I can't, I don't really know the guy. But he was like, you could tell that he was just like, this is not what he's about at all. Like what was presented, and so a bunch of the guys in chat have, I think, seen this video and are saying Rollo Tomasi. And he's a grifter as well.
Rollo! I've had a run-in with Rollo. He blocked me.
He was like, nope. And that was his take. Then
Rollo was the last a previous because the
previous Andrew Tate.
Yeah, the previous. I don't know whatever happened to Nick Fuentes.
That guy barely made my radar. I wouldn't have been able to tell you his name unless he was introduced on the show. And I don't remember if Dr. Phil actually said his name or not. And the other guy, I don't know him either. He was more laid back about it. And it was like, if what he was presented with sounded fair to him, he would say that's fair. At one point, there's the 50 Shades comment. Women want you to do this or that, grab her by the throat and blah blah blah. he's like, Dr. Phil's like, is that okay? And he's like, yeah, if it's consensual. It's not okay if it's not consensual, but if it's consensual, like, that's the thing. None of these people took the bait, really. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I'm taking a look. Yeah, it does. And the reason why I got blocked by Rollo was because he said that men should exist separate from women, but then that they also perform for women, and that is like an essential component of masculinity. And I just pointed out that that's a contradiction.
Yeah, how can you... Well, I suppose it's kind of similar in the way that Hollywood exists separate from the plebs, but an essential component of being an entertainer is performing for the plebs. But they consider themselves separate and above us. And I think there's some ways in which men can consider themselves separate and above what women have become in the modern world, and what women have decided to be, even though women won't admit that's what they are. Like, if somebody doesn't recognize their own agency, and your whole life is based on exercising your agency in order to make a place for yourself in the world and demonstrate that you have value, then you are separate and above that person. But men do, I guess, perform for women as a means of trying to, But the point of performing for women is to form relationships, to initiate relationships.
The reliance of men and women on each other is fine. Like this, I think that people get so stressed about being independent. Like, men get stressed about being emotionally independent from women, and women get stressed about being financially independent from men. That's like, well, Mother Nature did this. It made this sort of cooperative relationship because, again, our life cycle is bizarre. Like, honestly, the human life cycle is more bizarre than those parasites that become like 3 or 4 different forms, because it's like, how the hell did we manage to survive any kind of... How did we manage to evolve? Like, we have kids that are heavier than they are able to walk. Like, with puppies, for example, they grow up really quickly. They're really helpless, but they grow up quickly. With elephants, they grow up slowly, but they're not helpless. They can walk at birth. Human babies are helpless and heavy. They're awkward. So it's like, we're giving birth to tiger snacks. How did we survive? And it's like the absolute reliance of men on women for a sense of themselves, and women on men for resources, is Mother Nature hitting us with an evolutionary stick. Okay, so it just exists. I think people need to chill out about it. And like I said, the fact that I pointed this out to Rollo was part of the reason why he blocked me.
Because he couldn't explain it. That's my thinking.
He couldn't resolve the cognitive dissonance. But like I said, just chill out about that. It's okay. I think we've survived this far. It's not going to kill us. Yeah. Just to rely on each other and to be honest about it and have gratitude.
This is the thing. The thing I don't like about blocking in a circumstance like that is, if the thing that you've expressed... him blocking you. If the thing that you've expressed is right, you should be able to... You should understand it well enough, if you're going to express it, to be able to defend it and explain it. And if the thing that you've expressed has a meaning that's different than the other person is taking from it, you should be able to clarify it, right? Mm-hmm. And if the thing that you've expressed is wrong, you should be able to discuss it with the other person at length in an effort to clarify what is right, so that you can adjust what you're saying to match what's right. So if the other person can back their argument, and they have facts and logic and reason, and you're looking at it going, I really can't argue with that, then that's the correct point. They've corrected you. And being corrected doesn't necessarily mean anything bad. That's you getting an opportunity to hone your outlook and sharpen your wit and learn new things. There's nothing wrong with that. You should be doing that your whole life. If you're 98 years old, you should still be doing that.
All right. In this instance, I think that, and here's something that I've noticed about men that's slightly irrational. Not all men, but a significant portion of them. That whole idea of recognition. Okay. Just the squirrel.
Oh, okay. No. Squirrels are evil.
Oh, no. It's the dread enemy of the dog, the squirrel.
They must be eradicated.
Yeah. Anyway, so the idea that men have this emotional dependency on women, like a lot of these individuals sell this kind of emotional independence. And when I pointed out that he was both saying men are emotionally independent and saying that manhood is based on performance for women, I hit that cognitive dissonance.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of guys who want to maintain an attitude of emotional independence from women, and I include male feminists in that, because in having the relationship between men and women framed in terms of villainy, that is essentially saying that men are emotionally independent from women. They can be villainous because they don't care. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it's the same kind of attitude. And a lot of guys have trouble talking about that. And I think that's what I sort of triggered with him. And I think that Andrew Tate may also be feeding a bit on that as well. It is really rare, in my opinion, in my experience, to find a guy who can simultaneously acknowledge that men are emotionally dependent on women and also seek to become an independent person, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think part of it is the all or nothing approach that ends up getting taken a lot in political discussion.
Well, you can choose the women.
Well, what I mean is, there's a degree of independence everybody should seek, and there's a degree of interdependence that everybody should seek, because humans are a social species. And even me saying that, I'm not a very social person. Like, given my druthers, I would probably spend most of my time doing solitary activities, and it's just the way I am. And again, there's a diagnosis that goes along with, but even I have to have some sort of social interaction. I got married, right? I raised a family.
Yeah.
So you have to have some degree of social engagement with other people, and you do have to have some degree of social engagement with the opposite sex for your health, for your welfare. The problem is we also do need to have some degree of independence, or you make yourself vulnerable to being hurt by other people. And there has to be a balance, right? There has to be a degree where, and that's what boundaries are. Like, that's what your interpersonal boundaries are. And the biggest issue that I have with these types of discussions, like where he says this, you say, but that's a contradiction, and then he blocks you instead of any further discussion happening, is you never get to the point of discussing, well, okay, what really needs to happen is women need to recognize men's boundaries and respect them just as much as women expect men to recognize women's boundaries and respect them. And that has stopped happening, and men should not put up with that. And that doesn't mean abandoning women, and it doesn't mean abandoning their boundaries. It means, and it's not good necessarily to discuss it in terms of dependence and independence. It means that men aren't going to be able to protect themselves without recognizing that women have boundary issues. And men are not going to be able to protect themselves without recognizing that there's a degree to which they do need to extricate themselves from female society. But that discussion couldn't happen because he blocked you, which is annoying.
Okay, just to clarify, what I was talking about was there is a unique kind of dependence that men seem to have on women. In other words, they're more dependent on the being socially desirable to women and being sexually desirable to women than the reverse.
Yeah.
And part of that is because women's desirability, social and sexual, is more inherent. And that I'm not saying that is a good thing. I'm not saying it's the is versus ought. I'm saying it is. It's not an ought to be.
Right.
And because of that, men's social desirability and sexual desirability seems to be more connected to women's opinions about them. And I was pointing that out, and I was pointing out the fact that he was asserting the opposite and the same thing at the same time. And I think that put him into a sense of cognitive dissonance. And it's like, and I understand that this is an extremely uncomfortable place to be. And I think that it's why our audience is fairly small, fairly select, and very, very, in many cases, sort of a, very different kind of men, because it's difficult to recognize that as a man, to recognize that vulnerability and be able to stare at it and look at it and poke it without running screaming, which is what Rollo did. Yeah. He ran screaming from it. And he ran screaming from the cognitive dissonance of it. Whereas I think men in our community are more capable. Maybe it's because they live more in the intellectual, or alternatively, they're just in a different space emotionally. They can sit with that. And I think that they're also men who are more likely to be able to establish those appropriate boundaries with women. You cannot establish boundaries until you recognize your vulnerability.
That's
the only
true.
men who
That's
are
true.
ever going to be able to establish appropriate boundaries when it comes to the desire to be desired by women are men who can contend with that without running away screaming into Andrew Tate, like into seeing themselves through Andrew Tate. And having said that, I think we should probably, move towards the patron show.
Right.
I wanted to maybe
before we move towards the patron show, we have a couple of things. We have a super chat and stuff, but what you just talked about is something that is supported among the men within our Discord. So, how do people get into our Discord?
Oh, okay. So you can, if you want to take part in building that kind of a community, you can go to feedthebadger.com/support. And it's really helpful. I hope that I actually do have some evidence that we are helping men are helping each other to establish those boundaries and to make recognize the vulnerability at the same time as overcome it to the degree that it can be overcome. Because I think that women are always going to be vulnerable in terms of needing men to take a lot of the risks that get the resources. And I think men are always going to be somewhat more vulnerable to that identity of wanting to be sexually and socially desirable to women. And it's like, I think we can be kind to each other. I think it's entirely possible for men and women to be kind with each other's foibles and frailties. And I think one of the wonderful things about having this kind of difference is that we learn gratitude and we learn compassion towards people who are different from us and experience the world differently. And a lot of that is being erased by this the powers that be and the gender orthodoxy. So anyway, I also wanted to end this by saying, no, I shouldn't have used the E word. I wanted to say that, Andrew masculinity, and I can see why a lot of men get invested in living vicariously through him. So they're providing him resources, they're providing him attention because of that. It's because the feminist version of toxic masculinity does not acknowledge vulnerability to women. So you don't have to deal with that at the same time as you don't really have to question some fundamental aspects of the gender orthodoxy. This is something that is being received from feminism. This is the result of reducing masculinity down to a single note, a single discordant note, and one that very few men actually identified with when feminism was constructing this version of masculinity. So he is essentially saying you can be a man through the toxic masculinity definition put forth by feminism, and that's better than recognizing vulnerabilities, and it's better than having no identity whatsoever. So feminists have essentially constructed the entire marketplace that Andrew Tate and men like him operate. So I want to suggest something different or offer something different. These are my observations of what masculinity actually is and what I've noticed about men and what they do. Men have a much, much stronger tendency to want to see themselves in terms of their actions and the consequences of those actions in the greater world. They also, when they're actually just in general, they want to see those actions in terms of being needed and also benefiting women. This is that they want to protect and provide for women. They want to make sure women are well taken care of. And I think that this is one of the main reasons, the main drivers behind the fact that we have a society in the first place. So men's and masculinity is much more characterized by firefighters, by policemen who are doing, servicing their community, by soldiers who are protecting the boundaries of their community, by businessmen who are building healthy businesses, by doctors who are taking care of their patients. All of these professionals and the professional ethics and the desire to take risks to benefit others, that is masculinity. Not wanting to drive fast cars and have sex with lots of women. That is the feminist version of masculinity. That's what they want to restrict men to, because they don't want to acknowledge that masculinity has its virtues.
And then they want to complain about it.
And that men express those virtues differently than women. They express different virtues than women. That there are virtues that are much more associated with masculinity than femininity. They don't want that because they call that masculine superiority, even though they're perfectly happy to associate virtues with women that they do not associate with men. And they're perfectly happy of associating human ills like domestic violence and rape and other forms of sexual assault with men and not with women. So they're perfectly happy associating everything negative with men, including infidelity, lack of loyalty, vicarious pleasure seeking, only being interested in resources, taking from society instead of giving. They're perfectly happy of associating that with masculinity and saying, that's what makes you a man. That's the only way you can have an identity. And they are absolutely happy with associating everything positive with women and none of the human ills with women. And then if you say, no, actually there are virtues associated with men and masculinity, they call that supremacism. Even if you would say that there are also virtues associated with femininity and women. See, that's how it works. And what they have done is they have given men the scraps. They've said all virtue is feminine, all virtue is female, all virtue is women. You get a scrap heap. And Andrew has been picking through the scraps and cobbling together something that men can call their own. And feminists are still pissed.
Yep. But feminism is not about hating men, right, guys?
Yeah. like literally, they're just saying, yeah, all of these negative things, yeah, we don't want them. Being shallow, being an adulterer, being driven entirely by sexuality, and seeing society only in terms of what you get from it rather than what you give to it. Those are things that men can have, that they can associate with their identity. And so you get men who would rather have some identity rather than no identity. And Andrew Tate's cobbled it all together from those pieces, and there you go. You got a market.
Yep. And with that, I think we'll go into the super chats. Let me see. I think I lost one. It went past. Okay. So if a lady makes six figures early, all she need do is make solid investments and stocks. Okay, yep, that one I haven't read. Senior Sticks gave us $5, said that, and followed up with, then said women should marry any man she wants, even the bad boy. The only problem I have with that is the quote-unquote bad boy is usually a guy that's just very immature, and what ends up happening in a relationship where a woman who at least has the stability to provide for herself and things like that marries a guy who is immature, Then she starts mothering him, and then she starts smothering him, and she becomes an abuser, and he experiences abuse. Or, worse, because you can experience abuse and leave, with the smothering, mothering type. He starts to mature, and he is no longer the bad boy she married, and she abandons him. And in those instances, even if she's financially independent, women will still go after the guy's resources because he is a man. So then he's screwed for life. So I would say women need to make their decisions, and if they're going to seek a partner, they should make their decisions accordingly. If you're going to be a mature adult about supporting yourself, if you're going to be financially independent, if you're going to take accountability for your resources and your welfare, don't partner yourself. Don't be unequally yoked. Don't partner yourself with somebody who is not like-minded. Don't have a trophy husband, right? Because you're going to screw yourself, and you're going to screw him, and not in a good way. And I would give the same advice, really, to men. It's harder, if you're that person, to find a woman who is similarly driven, but you're better off with someone who has the maturity to be a careful steward of their labor resource, their intellectual resource, and the financial resource they gain from it, and then find somebody who will be emotionally invested in you and your welfare. Like, that's a rare unicorn, but that's who you should be looking for if you're that person, not somebody who's just going to look pretty on your arm. And I feel that way about both sexes, and the reason is, again, because if you want to have a relationship and not just appearances, you need somebody who you have things in common with, and who has things about you that they love. That's important. Let's see, we are at... I'm scrolling down now. Xeranx gave us $2 and said Brian had a fireside chat with the woman that's on. Oh, that'll be interesting. I did not realize that. She seemed interesting, too. Senior Sticks gave us $2 and said, you speak as a lady, women changed, men have not. And, yeah, women changed, and then the relationship between men and women changed, and men moved with it. I think that the male population as a whole has moved closer to being a cucked population, if that makes sense. And it's one of the reasons why men going their own way stand out so much, because they are not cucked, and why MRAs are so hated, because they refuse to be cucked. But I think that's actually a phenomenon that affects the male population in general. So men have changed, not as dramatically as women. Men haven't lost their dedication to women, but they're putting up with things that they shouldn't. And we got a super chat from Peter R. Gave us $5 and said Dick Masterson was still the best Dr. Phil guest ever. Have a great long weekend,
oh man,
guys.
Dick Masterson. No, he was great. Like, he was hilarious. Like, there always seems to be another one, because there was Tucker Carlson. No, is Tucker Carlson? No, wait. Is that the Fox show host?
Yeah, Tucker Carlson is the Fox News host that everybody watches just because of his facial expressions.
Before Dick Masterson, there was the guy who had the manliest page on the web. And he was good. He was hilarious. And then there was also this guy named Tucker, but I don't remember his last name. So it's like every couple of years there's a new one. And they basically say pretty much the same stuff about women and men. I mean, they're completely, like, honestly, a lot of women do really act like children.
Yeah.
And part of it is because they are groomed to act like children with social, I don't want to call them philosophies, but social pressures to basically turn themselves into victims in every circumstance. To see themselves in terms of their victimhood and inability and weakness, that creates a child.
Yeah.
And that women are socialized to do that. They're socialized to turn themselves into damsels. And I don't understand why every time I tell a feminist this, they just cannot make the connection between saying that women are victims of men and society in everything is damseling.
Yeah. Well, and it's an alien thing. Honestly, like, you have a majority of the female population is subjected to this pressure to, and a lot of it comes mostly from other women, really. This pressure to be the biggest victim, to have the biggest vulnerability, to display the most. There's a level of attractiveness, I guess, that comes from that level of vulnerability, to display the most helplessness, the most lack of capability of doing things for yourself, so that men will do them for you. And so on. And there are women who go out of their way. They'll go way, way overboard with just being, like the drop your hanky on the ground so some guy will dive for it and hand it back to you, because your dress is just too complicated for you to be able to bend over and pick it up. And that kind of femininity, if you grow up in an environment where there is no room for that kind of femininity, it becomes a really alien thing to deal with, and you end up butting heads with it in a way, as a female who didn't ever have that kind of pressure. And like for me, when I was growing up, my whole life was the opposite of that. My catchphrase when I was growing up was, "I'm okay." Like, that was it. That was my I didn't get hurt. Nothing's broken. I used to scare the shit out of the other kids' moms because I was always doing stupid daredevil shit. Can I climb this thing? Can I jump from here to there? Can I, how hard can I run into this thing without breaking my nose? Just dumb shit. But it was fun. Like, and that's not very girly. Right? I came home covered in mud. I came home with grass stains on every outfit I had. Had to learn not to climb a tree in a dress. Like, and if I didn't say I'm okay, everybody would rush to my aid, right? Like, you hear the banging noise. Oh gosh, Hannah just fell out of a tree. Like, nothing's broken. Don't worry, okay? Just like, let me go back up there. I'm fine, right? But girls that I met when I was in junior high, like, literally just no concept of that. Like, I met some girls that were like that, but most of them, if you saw them trip and fall or something like that, and everybody rushed to their aid, they ate it up. It wasn't embarrassing. It was like, oh, I just won a prize. Look, there are 6 people around me checking on me to see if I'm okay. Oh, I think I sprained my ankle. And that was the norm. And it was so alien. I don't know how to handle that when that happens.
Feminism teaches women to reach for incompetence, or to profess incompetence instead of strive for competence. And then feminism turns around and says, why does patriarchy think women are incompetent and not reward them to the same degree as men? It's like, okay. And it's funny because I'm in this argument with a feminist who says, oh, it's sexism and stereotype threat. And I'm like, you don't see the connection between teaching women to reach for victimhood and incompetence, to profess incompetence, inability constantly, might be contributing factor to everyone seeing women as having less ability than men.
Yeah.
I know. So anyway, but we should get to the after show. Right?
I guess
the after
an easy way for me to put how alien that is to me is it's a weird perspective to be the person who views the Caesar the wrestling bear phenomenon, where they had this bear that they took around to bars in the 90s, and you literally got into a ring with the bear and wrestled it. Who sees that not as a scary thing, but an opportunity to get to touch a bear without getting eaten, and to look at other women and watch them do that thing. Oh, I just sprained my ankle, when they really just kind of slipped and fell, and there's nothing wrong, and they haven't gotten hurt at all. But they have to do that because there's 6 people around. It's bizarre. It's like watching a surreal painting come to life. Like, where and why did that happen? Where did that come from? Right? So that's where we are. I suppose that's probably similar to men who have learned the going their own way thing, and understanding that, you don't have to necessarily kowtow to women just because men and women are connected. You don't have to be subservient. You don't have to be cucked. To look at a guy like Andrew Tate saying the things that he's saying, because in all honesty, from the things that they've showed in this show, not from his overall statements, because I don't know what all those are, but just that segment, if that was the only thing you ever saw of Andrew Tate, I would say he was cucked. Just saying. He's completely whipped right there. He's completely wrapped up in women. But I think that was our last super chat. I don't know. Did you see any super chows, Allison?
Sorry, I was just dealing with some dog squirrel antics.
Oh gosh. Did you see any super chows?
No, I didn't see any super chows. That's unusual.
And we do not have any rumble.
Send any super chows in. Yep. And I have nobody actually put anything through except earlier today. So yeah, if you want to support the show, please go to feedthebadger.com/support. Sorry that if you're hearing some snuffling, that's my dog. Yeah. And if you want to send us a tip, that's feedthebadger.com/justthetip. All right.
And there are no rumble rants, so that is it. Thanks for sticking out the 2-hour sausage. And thanks, Allison, for coming on and looking at this video with me. Thanks to everybody that works in the background to make HBR... this is an HBR talk. To make all of our shows happen. And good night, all.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.